Hello and welcome back to the studio. Today I'm painting the Bob Ross classic, Divine Elegance. I'll guide you step by step to create stunning mountains, happy trees and serene landscapes using Bob Ross's iconic wet on wet techniques. Perfect for beginners or anyone wanting to really get going with their paintings. Now grab your brushes and let's dive into this masterpiece and let's create some art magic. Lots to do. Let's spin the camera and get painting. So here's my canvas. It's a 16 by 20 and I've got it set up with landscape and I've taped off a little bit of a border, sort of as a homage to Bob's original painting. The very first thing I do though is to prime this with something called Bob Ross Liquid White Oil Paint. This is a wet on wet oil painting and I'll be applying one wet coat of oil paint on top of another. Now, if you don't have something like this, you can also make up your own sort of brew, which is something like this, linseed oil, and you want just the tiniest amount put onto your canvas, and then you can put a little tiny drop of titanium white oil paint on top and sort of mix them together. But it's a little bit more fiddly, and to be honest, I think just buying the right product is the way to go. Now, for the ease of application, I keep some in a little airtight pot. You can see this is the Bob Ross product, and you can see it's just like whipped cream. And I've also got a very old Bob Ross landscape brush, which I'm going to apply it with. And a little of this goes a very long way. And I'll touch a little bit onto the canvas, just to even it out a little bit. And then, so I don't pull off my tape at the edges, I start by doing the brushing in process. So just kind of brushing, you can go along the tape, just avoid brushing out. Now whilst I'm doing this, those very eagle-eyed amongst you will have spotted that I've got a couple of these pushed into my canvas, and these are just little mat pins, the sort of things you can buy in a stationer's, and really what they do is they give me an idea of where the horizon line is going to be. And for this particular painting it's about a third, just over a third for the bottom and just more than 2/3 for the top half. So my mountain will live in here, and then somewhere around about here I'm going to work my watery areas into the painting. The way to test this is to use your fingerprints. I touch the canvas in a couple of spots and check my hands. You can see nice clear fingerprints. If I touch and there's too much, it looks more like I've dipped my finger into some ice cream. This is really a common problem. People just put on too much liquid white and it ends up sort of really like a big mushy canvas. They can't get your colours to be bright and sort of vivid, and everything just sort of runs together. So this is the absolute maximum that you want to apply. And if your fingertips look like that, almost nothing on them, then you've been a bit too mean with it. But better to be a little more cautious than over. Right, let's carry on and add this liquid white to the entire canvas. Having covered everything with a thin, even coat of liquid white, I always finish off with some long flat strokes to even out the surface. Make sure there are no dry spots. And again, a little fingertip test. Each of the corners, my thumb in the middle, and have a quick check. Make sure you check your canvas every single time. I always check my work before I put any colour on. So a quick look at my palette. As you see, I'm actually going to be using all 13 of the Bob Ross colours for this, but I'm going to start off with just a few. Titanium white and phthalo blue and some phthalo green. I'll list the rest down in the description below. My first colour is going to be the phthalo blue for my sky. I want to carry on using this brush, so don't forget, give it a wipe off on a piece of paper towel. This is just dry cleaning. Knock off all of that surplus liquid white that I don't need. And I'm going to start with my phthalo blue colour. Now this is an eye-popping blue colour. You can see how strong that is, just a tiny bit. Goes a long way, and you can tell that its mate, phthalo green, is just as powerful. It's trying to make a run for it right now. So I'm going to start off with some phthalo blue and I'm going to put it up in the corners. Again, brush in rather than brushing out. Those colours are just eye-popping. But it's one of the reasons why I actually like this painting, because it is really super bright. The contrast between the greens and the blues, just wonderful. So be careful on that tape. As I work down towards the horizon line, this colour is going to run out, and I'm going to be picking up liquid white on my brush, you can see what happens is the colour starts to fade away. Directly overhead it might be dark blue. By the horizon line it might be very pale blue. You can see what's happening here. I'm starting to run out of colour. Now the other thing to remember is I've got a mountain to sit in here, I've got a tree over there, and lots more information here in the foreground. So how much blue do you need for this sky? So I'm going to keep blending down till I reach my pins. And if it's faded away to almost nothing by there, then well, I'm okay with that. Now my top tip, stand back, because there's a chance that when you start off, you'll end up just sort of putting all the blue paint just in one corner. And then if you don't blend it across properly, what happens is you end up with what I call a panda's ear. It's two blue corners that always look like triangles. And this way, when you stand back, you want to make sure you've got a nicely graduated sky. And always take your time when you're doing this step. I know you just want to rush through it and get to the next bit. But believe you me, if this isn't right and you put a mountain and a tree and bushes and clouds on there and then you see something you don't like, you think, oh, I wish I'd blend it out a little bit more, you'll be in a bit of a pickle. So trust me, do this really well before you move on. For the area below the pins, I want phthalo blue and a hint of phthalo green. So phthalo blue, a little touch of phthalo green, I got that run. Just tint that up a little bit. And for this, I want to come on from the sides, pull and lift off. And I want a little bright area through the center. So when you're pulling in, edge to center, and then just give it a little bit of a lift. And make sure you stay fairly level with this. You don't want them going down in the center or at a funny angle. And once again, bear in mind, you're going to have some islands here. You're going to have some land here, maybe trees over there. So you might only really see a small amount of this in the finished painting. So bear that in mind when you're adding colour, not to fret too much about what happens at the very edges, if something's not perfect. In the end, you might only see 10% of what you're painting at this stage, so save your energy for later on in the painting. I will dry clean it one more time and finish this off with some long flat strokes right the way across, just to make sure everything is sitting nice and level. So there, my background sky and water is complete. It's time to put on some clouds and then a mountain. Quite unusual for a painting is a very big central statement. That mountain, I usually position mine off to the one side, off to the left or off to the right, a little bit lower than the horizon line, a little bit lower than the top edge. In this painting, Bob breaks all the rules. He says, let's whack it right in the very centre, going off the very top edge of the canvas, and he literally drops in the mountain right at the very top, going off the top of the canvas completely. Like so, which is something which we don't often see in a painting. He also wants to get in a couple of little background peaks on this side, another little background peak on the other side, and even a foreground peak. Now whether we get all of that into our painting or not, I don't know. But as I say, this painting breaks all the rules. A central peak, two side peaks, similar size, one's a little further back, but that one's also in the background, and then something in the foreground which is really off to one side and draws your eye away. Maybe that's why I like this painting so much. It doesn't stick to the rules. But just mapping things out gives us a big advantage. So for my clouds, I'm using a number 3 Bob Ross Fan Blender. And I'm going to pick up a good amount of titanium white right on the corner of my brush. Really load it very well. Don't be mean with the paint. And as you see, here's the edge of the cloud I sort of sketched out on my painting. And again, you can see now the position of the main mountain and these two side peaks. And I've explained this a few times before, but what you want to do is you want to be painting little C shapes, C for cloud. Now, brushes like to be led across the canvas, in other words, drawn across. They don't like to be being pushed. See, if you try and push it, what happens is the brush just breaks apart. If you stroke the canvas though, you can create these lovely bubbly edges. And that's what we want for our cloud. We want soft, broken edges. Sometimes call them cauliflower clouds. And there we are. So you've got a nice broken edge. And I'm going to carry on using what's left of this paint on my brush. As it runs out, it's going to start mixing with the blue, and it's going to create a lovely shadow colour. So we have the silver lining and the shadow all done in one. And my next cloud isn't going to be until about here. So I can carry on doing this and leaving little touches of paint behind. And this is how you sort of construct the whole cloud. It doesn't look just flat now, it looks three-dimensional. There we go. Having got the basic design on, we can use a clean dry brush. Again, this is a Bob Ross 1-inch landscape brush I'm using. I'm using just the fewest hairs to do this bit. Let me see if I can get my hand out of the way. And the idea is going just with the very corner of the brush, and just a couple of hairs, picking up a little bit of paint, leave that silver lining, just pick up that surplus paint and dab it somewhere else. Give your brush a bit of a dry clean, and then you can even brush across this with the side of the brush. Very smooth bristles on the side, very soft. As you see, you can just gently pull the paint back into the centre of the cloud. There. Now I can see the position I've got left for the next cloud. So there we are. Some nice simple little clouds, painted really quickly, and that's my top tip. Paint them with a little bit of pace. It seems the faster you paint these clouds, the less inclined you are to mess with them and mess them up. Now, let's get on with this mountain. To underpaint my mountain, I need some good strong dark colour. Prussian blue, some black, Van Dyke brown and little alizarin crimson. Now look, here's something, a top tip for you. See how runny that Prussian blue is? It's a brand new tube of paint and it's a little on the oily side. That will make my mountain dark colour too wet and runny. So here's a little tip. Put a little piece of paper towel just under it and soak up some of that oil. It only takes a few moments to do and you can get rid of all the surplus wetness in that paint. So make sure you haven't got really runny oil paint when you do this. And this one needs a little bit of tissue as well. And I need to mix up a good strong dark blue colour. So a nice drop of Prussian blue, good drop of black, good slug of Van Dyke brown, and I think I'm probably going to use most of the alizarin crimson. And this needs to be mixed together. And the colour I want is a deep inky blue colour. There, you can see on my palette, I've now got that nice deep blue colour I'm looking for. Whilst I think about it, if your canvas is too wet, and this is a question that came up recently, you can also take your knife and scrape off all of the surplus white, liquid white and any clouds. See, that little tiny bit of paint might be getting in your way. So that's how you dry your canvas off. Just scrape off the bits you don't need. Now, back to where I was a moment ago. Pick up a small roll of dark mountain base colour. Finger on the back of the knife, and with firm pressure you want to really press this down into the canvas. As I mentioned right at the very outset, this painting breaks all the rules. It goes off the top in its dead centre. Let's press this paint down into the canvas. Again, and as I go, I press the paint in and I scrape off the surplus. You'll notice that I want to keep all of the dark colour in the top part of my mountain. I don't want it down here near the horizon line. I want my mountain to fade as it goes to the horizon line, a bit like my sky. So don't drag all your dark paint down there. Keep it all at the top. Take off all the surplus paint. I can't emphasise this enough. I think people leave all the dark paint on there. and then they try and make the snow, the white snowy effect, stick to it, and there's a big sort of mob of dark colour on there, and literally nothing will stick. Even if it's really dark, it still won't stick properly. Scoot the excess away. You hear how tough I'm getting with that. Okay. And I want to remove all the remaining surplus paint. I'll pick up my nice brush. And all I really want to do is just to pull that excess paint away from the mountain. So I don't want to drag it all the way down. I just want to give it a light flick. There isn't a lot of paint here. I just want to remove that surplus paint, especially down at the bottom here. I want to get into a nice shadowy area. So that's it. The basic design of my mountain, really nice and quick. Don't spend a lot of time sort of adding bits and pieces to it, because I know from experience that when you start adding snow to this, little kind of happy accidents are going to happen. You're going to get little bumps and lumps appearing. Bob called them yahas, and it's really just kind of accidental little mistakes and things that happen on the edge that give your mountain a bit of character. In my painting, the sun is coming from the right hand side. So all the right hand sides of my mountain peaks are in full sun. So if I took my palette knife and I just sort of did a broken line down the front of my mountain, I could say this side of the mountain peak is all in sunshine. This side of the mountain peak is all in shadow. For the highlights on my mountain, I want to use some titanium white for the highlight side, and white with a little touch of Prussian blue maybe, even a little touch of the mountain mixture colour we used, just to grey it slightly. The idea is you want distinctly different colours. A good strong highlight, a good strong shadow, and a good strong base colour. You want 3 different values. If the highlights and shadows look too similar, then you tend to find that the painting looks a little kind of flat and lacks a little bit of that sort of depth of colour that you're looking for. Spread your highlight, your white snow paint out very flat, and load a little roll of paint on the knife blade. Let's concentrate on just painting these front ones first. Super light touch, can't emphasize this enough. You want to just hold it with your fingers here. You don't want to put too much pressure on the knife blade, and you want to cock the handle away from the canvas, and you want to touch, but right at the very edge of the mountain. Don't leave a little gap. Remember, there's no dark outlines to this mountain peak. You're going to start here and you're going to end up over there with your knife. So it's going to and turn. It's going to go from upright to flat as you turn. So there's 2 actions in one, and this is what takes a little practice. Hand up nice and high, and as you come around with the handle, let the knife blade flatten a little bit, and then off to the side and complete the whole stroke. Don't stop halfway. Pick up a little more paint, and you see all these lovely breaks in the mountain peak. And again, touch, handle held high. As you come round, let the handle flatten out. Again, follow the direction of the mountain to the pin. And you can come back in here and you can change the shape of your mountain. Remember, that little zigzag line was just a suggestion. I did enough mountains, so I got happy with the technique, but it does take some time. So there you go, there's all the lovely highlight side of my mountain. Now I come back in and I want the shadow side. As you see, it's got a nice blue-grey colour to it. I even put a little bit more of that dark colour into there. I really want to make sure this is dark enough. Sometimes they say they get a little bit on the sort of, a bit pastel. Now, you only need a small amount for this side. Much smaller than the shadow side. And again, I'm going to come up behind these mountain peaks and I'm going to bump this mountain peak. Now, in here, I might use the small blade of my palette knife to sneak in there, but on this big peak, I'll demonstrate for you. I come up behind the peak, I touch it, give it a little bump, and then I ski away down the mountain. Bump and ski away. When you bump, what you do, you can reshape the mountain, but you also drag some paint over that little peak. Nice little peak in there. We'll give him a little bump. Again, drag away. You can hear very little paint on my knife. There we go. Picked up a little bit of that shadow colour on the tip of my knife, on the small blade. Let's just add in a few little shadows in here. There we go. Sometimes that's all it needs to be. The smallest amount of paint can sometimes do amazing things. I like that lovely dark edge on there. Bob had it on his original mountain painting. I might be keeping the same. Now I don't want to go too much further because I've got a nice tree coming in here, and what I don't want is a ton of heavy white paint to fight my way over. Now let's start some work on this one. We know it's shadow and highlights. In that very last little sequence, you saw how I took a very straight, maybe slightly unappealing looking peak, just moved a little bit of snow further out, dropped in a little shadow, and there you go. You can change the shape of your mountains. I move things around all the time. I particularly like this lovely dark edge here which pushes this mountain peak back. If you get a painting which doesn't quite look right, as though it's not got enough sort of depth to it, you can use little tiny touches of the original dark colour to go back in. And this is a little tip I've been teaching for many, many years now, that if your mountains look a little bit sort of plain or a bit safe, you can go in with just the tiniest little bits of the original dark base colour and just drop back in a little shadow if you think you've lost something in your mountain. It doesn't take much though, and you don't want to overdo this bit, but you can get some really impressive, lovely looking mountain peaks and crags just by going back and putting back in some of the dark if you lose it. There you go, just putting just a few little craggy bits in here and there. Suddenly I've taken a sort of slab of white and I just added back in just a couple of lovely breaks into my painting. Just lots of little tips you pick up along the way. To finish off the base of my mountain, I take my nice brush, I clean dried it, and I just want to tap, create a little bit of a misty effect. So I just want to catch the very last little touches of paint I applied for snow, and just tap, as Bob would say, follow the lay of the land. In other words, follow it down the slope. Now, if you don't have enough paint on your brush for the mountain, just touch into a little bit of the paint on your palette. And you're going to add in a little bit of extra misty effect. There you go. I think I prefer it without those little foothills. I think it's just a little bit too much for my particular painting. But I do want to paint another mountain peak and take it right across to the other side. Now, one thing Bob did to his painting, which I forgot, is he snuck in a little cloud in here. I wonder what was missing. So let's do that now. I think I can get in there with my fan brush, just a tiny touch. Doesn't need to be very bright, just a little bit of this sort of blue-grey paint. Not very much paint. I'm going to see if I can sneak something in here over the back of this cloud in just here, a little bit of a misty effect. So I'm going to pick up some of the colour from the mountain, but that's okay. And finally, I use my fan brush just to smooth down those rough edges here and there. Let's bring this all together. There. I think that's quite good. Now, let's start moving into the midground. At the very base of this mountain, there needs to be some way of sort of bringing it from the far distance into the midground, and we need something to link the two together. For this, we want some little nice little fir trees. And Bob did this by using some of his shadow mixture. I've got some here on the side. Add a little bit of crimson to it, give it more of a sort of lavendery kind of tint. I think that's going to work quite well. Maybe a little on the dark side. Let's add some white to the side of it. Now, these are not a lot of trees, just something here. A bit of a lavender tint, something sort of fairly soft that we can use to link one area of our painting to the other. And I'm going to go back in with my fan brush. I'm going to load it really well with colour. You see I've got a sort of slightly lavender tone to this. And as you take your brush through the paint, give it a little wiggle. You really want to drive the bristles apart. When you do that, it means your brush comes to a nice chiseled edge. So I'm going to sort of start over here and maybe just try a couple of exploratory dabs of paint. No, they're not quite bright enough, are they? Let's try a little touch more white. Starting to show up. And this is how we work. We tend to sort of do a few little dabs, see what works out. If it doesn't work out, maybe come back in and add a little bit more mist behind it. That, I think, is going to be the solution. You see, every time you do a painting, you learn something new. So I'll put a little bit more titanium white paint. My 1-inch brush. Pick up a little bit of that. I don't want it pure white. I want this to be sort of a misty grey colour. And back to my lavender colour. And let's try again. Now we've got something. The colour is dark enough to actually show up. These don't really want to be very strong. Remember, they're supposed to be quite a long distance away in our painting. And sometimes I like to put on a couple of little marker ones. So I might put on sort of 3 or 4. So I've got some tall ones and some short ones. Then all I have to do is link up the gaps in between. Now I'm going to be putting something in this area. It'll probably cover those ones up. But it's a good place to practice. And of course, anything I don't want to show up as a tree, I can turn into a reflection. I've got my old brush here. I gave it a little bit of a wash, and I just go in my brush, give it a little push, and pull down. It'll turn those into reflection in the water. You can add a little waterline to it as well. Notice when I do this, I go in and I push really firmly with the brush. What I want to do is I want to get the bristles to really dig into the paint. So when I brush down, it pulls down a nice sharp reflection and it creates that nice little waterline for me. And of course, a gentle brush across. For the waterline, I'm going to use just some of this really grubby paint. Bob uses the liquid white, but I think I like this a little easier. It's not quite so runny. So just some really grubby titanium white paint, and again, just touch and press and slide the knife along. These don't have to be continuous, you can have little steps in them, but still water lies flat, so you don't want these going at funny angles. You want to try and get these as level and flat as you can. The only way I can see if they are is to actually stand back. I think that looks quite good. I'll take a little more and finish that off. There. Now I can think about painting some bigger trees. I'm going to paint some evergreen trees over here on the left hand side on a little bank. And for that I need a nice dark green colour. I'm going to take this mountain mix colour and I'm going to convert it into a nice dark green. So I'm going to take sap green and phthalo green. A good amount of each. Wow, look at that. Isn't that lovely? It's a really lovely fresh green colour that I use quite a bit when I'm painting these sorts of scenes. I think it really kind of gives the whole painting a lovely feel to it. I'll take a little bit of this dark green colour here and we'll make a little bit of a plan on where we're going to go. You see, we've got to try and get a piece of island in here, something else in the foreground and something else on the corner. So let's start off by just sort of mapping out where that area goes. And say, don't want it to go too far across the painting. So that's the corner taken care of. And we've got this other little piece of land here which comes out, well, probably almost to the centre. Again, it's maybe a little right of centre, so let's put a little bit of a mark on there. And again, it comes through to this left-hand side. Notice there's a little bit of a slope to it. And that slope comes down in nice little steps. So we can do a nice little step to there, one to there, one to there. So this sort of gives us a nice idea of where our painting's going. This little bit of planning really gives us a sort of sense of knowing where everything's going to be before we get there. Paint the positions of a couple of these trees. Now, I don't want them too thin, too far to this end here, it's a little bit thin. I might actually make this a little bit stronger looking, I think, so I can put a tree out there. That's a little better. And if I have some small trees out here, that'll work quite well. And also maybe something a little bit bigger. Now, I didn't put any snow here deliberately. I didn't really want to load this area with snow because if I put a nice tree there, it means I don't have to, again, fight over a lot of snow. I think I can probably get another one out here on the end. Different sizes. I think we'll have to give this a couple of little friends here in the middle. So I've got 4 trees here. I might give him another little friend as well. Okay, so you've got 5 little trees. Again, I've mapped things out a little bit, so I'm not going into this completely blind. Now, my trees are going to have those little distinctive uppy strokes to them, so nice little upward smiles. So I'm going to use my brush on a corner and I'm going to be pressing upwards. Do some little touches and press that brush into the painting to make the bristles bend up. There we go, a nice little fir tree. So we'll give him a little friend. Again, just little upward pushes. And so they kind of hold hands a little bit, so they don't have to be individuals. You can have them bumping into each other. And again, another little tree there. And we'll give him a little friend as well. The rest of the island, I just want to be covered in some nice vegetation, and I'll continue doing those little upward pushes. And of course, anything we have there needs something of a reflection. So with not very much paint on my brush, just a little bit, let's just tap in the suggestion of a tree. These don't have to be particularly accurate. In fact, that one's so small it probably wouldn't even reflect. But we'll put a little touch of colour there anyway. And there's not much paint there because I'm going to be brushing down and brushing across. And I'll do that with the entire riverbank here just to create some nice reflections in the water. This is definitely what they call the ugly phase of a painting, when you're sort of just putting lots of dark colour into there. Never looks quite as nice as the background when it's finished, until of course we start adding some highlights to it. So right now you just have to sort of kind of live with it for a bit. I might actually add another tree or two in there because it looks a little barren. I can even add a few more small ones. So having completed the underpainting, let's add some highlights to it. I'm going to use a clean dry fan brush for this. Keep the other fan brush for doing some more fir trees in a moment. I start out by just using a little bit of that sap green, a tiny touch of the phthalo green, and wow, look at that for a highlight. Now you have to be careful here because these colours want to really kind of get together and have a good party, and they kind of can get very mushy very quick and you lose that lovely sharpness. So notice how I sort of pull this down in a little bit of a curtain, so got lots of different colours I can dip into, and I just want to make sure I get a little bit of this on the edge of my brush. I give it a little push, just get a little tiny bit of that colour right on the very edge of my brush. Now we know the light's coming from this right hand side, so we are probably going to have most of the highlights on the right sides of these trees, but not every tree has to have a highlight. Get my hand around here. Just going to do a little upward press. Very, very gently though. So just do that one. One behind I'm going to leave in shadow. Maybe this one gets a little bit of highlight. Again, not every tree has to have the same colour. I picked up a little touch of Indian yellow on my brush for this little tree. And again, just a little touch of colour. It's all it takes. Now, this gets to feeling good, folks. I will admit to over highlighting my paintings before and just kind of having fun with it, just putting on loads and loads of colour. But generally speaking, when you stand back, they can look a little bit sort of not quite right, just a little bit over the top. So do this a little bit at a time, take a step back, think about where the light might have a shadow, so behind this tree could be dark. So bring the highlights in front, but don't put the highlights directly behind the tree. A little touch of that Indian yellow colour and some green. See, just a nice golden colour. Because this could get a little samey. There, just pop a little bit of something different in. Remember, the green paint that we put on there, that dark, dark, heavy mixture, is thick and sticky. And a thin paint, like a highlight, should stick to it easily. If you find it doesn't, then it might be that the two mixtures are very similar. Now, you can get around that by either adding a little tiny drop of thinners to the highlights, make them a little more runny so they stick easy. You could even add a little drop of liquid clear to it. Or if you want them to really pop, you could even add a tiny drop of liquid white to it. But it just makes the colour really jump. Let's see if I can make my colours stick a little easier. Well, I don't have odorless thinners in the house, but I do have some linseed oil. And that'll do the same thing. See, it makes the paint a little more glossy, a little thinner. I groove my brush through that colour. Give it a little push. And let's see if that sticks a little easier. Oh, there we go. Instantly, I can get this paint to stick a lot easier than I could before. In Bob's painting, he puts some little rocks on here as well. I'm not going to do that on my painting. I'm going to leave it without, but I might use rocks further down in the painting. I'm going to use my old brush that I did the reflections with in the background. I made sure it's nice and dry clean. And here I'm going to be very careful. I'm just going to grab a little of this colour. Now remember, this is going to want to slide a fair bit easier than that grey colour did in the background. So when you do this, just grab the very, very edge. Okay, and if you pick up a little bit too much paint, give it a dry clean. My advice is not go over and over and over this, because you end up kind of creating almost a big curtain of colour here. And it gets very hard to control, and the whole thing just becomes a bit of a mush. So once you've done this once, give your brush a nice dry clean. And then super light. I can't tell you how much these are going to move because they will slide very easily, and I barely hold the brush when I do this. Literally, I let my brush just kiss the canvas. Any more pressure than that, and this will smear everywhere. Of course, I need a little waterline, so I've got some my grubby white paint, and I might use the small blade of my knife for this. And I'm just going to sneak in between my reflections and the land. Just drop in a little waterline here and there. And if you get any that are too bright, let's put a bright one on there. I got a little too much paint on my knife. See, and that looks a little bit too bright. Just clean the knife off. Sit your knife back over it again and give it a little rub. Let the paint just mix a little bit of the water underneath, or the colours underneath, and you can knock it right back down again. If you want, you can do what I like to do, is to run your knife over some of these little reflections and add a little extra detail there. There we go. It's very easy to add detail using the palette knife. Now, let's carry on working into the foreground. I need to do maybe a bigger tree here on the left hand side, and obviously think about doing trees on that right hand side next. To save you having to sit and watch me do this over and over and over, I'm going to use a little bit of time lapse, but I'll give you a bit of a close up when I paint that tree over there. So I've completed the left hand side, and I'm going to work in this right hand bank, and I went ahead and filled this area in. Now I want to give you another good close up of me painting fir trees, and I try to get the camera at a good angle so you can see the brushwork. Well, everything's a little bit lopsided, but that's okay as long as you can see what I'm doing. And the first thing I like to do is to actually drop in the center line of my tree. Just drop that in. And don't forget we got the tape just there, so some of this tree is going to go off the edge. Now, top tip for you. If you're going to start doing fir trees, make sure they don't line up with exactly the tops of mountain peaks. They can look a little odd. And I also try not to line up too much with the other trees. I want everything at slightly different positions here, so I think this tree needs to be pretty big. Bigger than this one, bigger than this peak. So it brings it a little further forward in the painting. And as I said, I just want to get the brush on a corner. And you want to just angle the brush up so you're just pressing with the very corner of the brush. And you just want to go in and just touch gently and press upward. Press. Now, if you find the zigzagging and the pressing all at the same time is sort of one move too many, then try this technique. Just get used to pressing with the corner, pushing up, just filling in the center line of the tree. And kind of get an action. The other thing I want you to do is to listen as you hear my brush hit the canvas. Makes a nice crunching sound. That tells me you're using a pushing stroke rather than a sliding stroke. Sliding strokes don't make any sound. Now you can add a few little side branches. So as you come down, add a couple here and there. Leave a little gap and add another couple. And this way you can sort of decide how wide a tree you need as you go. You can stand back, do a little more, stand back and do a little more. And by the time you get to the bottom, you really want to be painting off the edge of the tape there, and maybe even have room for another little tree. But you decide. As Bob would say, it's your world and you have it the way you want it. With a little practice, you get used to just blasting little trees in wherever you want them. Now I can come back in, put highlights on, and even a tree trunk maybe for these two. For my tree trunks, I'm going to use a little touch of dark sienna, a little bit of yellow ochre, maybe even a touch of white. I just want to marble mix these together. If it's too bright, you can always add a touch of Van Dyke brown as well. And again, just marble these up. I'm going to take just a little roll on the very small blade of my knife, and just here and there, just through the center of my tree. You don't have to add it all the way, just here and there. And then we can add some highlights over the top and finish our trees off. And again, light from the right hand side, and you just want to hit probably about one in every 4 or 5 branches. And there we go. Just drop that on. And again, as you come to the center of the tree, let the paint just run out so it's brighter on the right and darker on the left. Down at the base, nice and dark. And for a little extra pop, I added a tiny little touch of titanium white into my colour to make it really jump. But just be aware that this colour is firm and dry, and it may make this colour too firm to stick. We'll see. No, it wants to go on good. Here's a top tip though, don't kill all that lovely dark. And now the moment of truth, the big reveal. Let's peel off the tape. Top tip, have a little bit of paper towel on hand so you can put that masking tape in it. It's very sticky, and of course you're going to need something to keep your hands clean now. So have a baby wipe ready. Remember, you can't touch the outside of this painting now. That piece of tape didn't come off. I have a surprise. And there you go. I just let my painting go out the side of the canvas. I think it adds a little bit of extra special touch to my painting. And lastly, a few scratchy sticks and twigs. And you can use the edge of the knife just to run up through the paint, add some really fine little details to your painting. So there you have it, my version of the Bob Ross classic, Divine Elegance. A lovely painting, and one I think you should try painting next. So there we have it, a Bob Ross classic, Divine Elegance. Did you like that little expose at the very end there, where I put my painting out the corner? It's a neat little trick, and one you should try on your next painting. Now, if you've enjoyed this tutorial and you got some value from it, don't forget, leave a little thumbs up for a like. You can drop a comment for me. You could even go ahead and subscribe to the channel for all the new free content. Don't forget to ring the little bell. That lets me know that you want to know what comes next. That was a mouthful, wasn't it? But if you want to go a little further, you can always support the channel by going to the Buy Me a Coffee link down below. You can leave a small donation or maybe make a monthly donation, become one of my little superstars. It's all up to you. Now, don't move because there's some lovely paintings for you to do coming right along. Happy painting, people.